Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venture Fuel Visionaries podcast. I'm your host, Fred Schonenberg. I'm so excited today to welcome to the show Fatih Nayebi. Fatih is the Vice President of Data and AI at ALDO Group. He has over 20 years of experience leading AI initiatives that transform retail operations and customer experiences. Fatih is a faculty lecturer at McGill University, and he is the author of Foundations of Agentic AI for Retailer. This is the first book on autonomous AI systems in retail, and he's going to share his insights on how AI is reshaping retail overall and the challenges of scaling these technologies, something I know all of our listeners are very interested in. So please join me in welcoming Fatih to the show. Fatih, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here and also sharing some of the insights and looking forward to have a great discussion with you.
Well, I would love to kind of level set with maybe your journey, like what led you to specialize in data, analytics, and AI?
Yeah, so I'm coming from comp sci, computer science and engineering background, and I've been always into programming, computer science, and also artificial intelligence. And I did my master and the PhD in the field. And back then, that AI wasn't as popular or as sexy. I was doing some AI, let's say, mostly like predictive and then prescriptive AI. So that brought me to doing any different types of AIs in different types of industries, including financial institutions, a bit in the healthcare, and most recently in retail, which is very interesting, of course, because of all the trends and because of all the velocity of specific to fashion retail and a lot of data that we have.
Yeah, it's really interesting, even just thinking of those three industries coming together for you to be doing that work in all three at different times must be fascinating. I know at ALDO, you're leading the initiatives related to AI, and I'm wondering if you've could maybe help us think through maybe some of the listeners that aren't familiar with ALDO or not familiar with some of the work they're doing in AI. Can you give a couple examples of maybe some of the projects you've worked on and some of the results of that work?
Of course. Let me just do a very quick introduction about the ALDO Group itself.
Great.
Because ALDO is a global retailer. We have multiple brands, including ALDO Shoes. That's the most known version. And then we have the Cold Spring that operates in Canada. We own all the stores in the United States and Canada. And then we have the franchisee system all across the globe. So we operate in more than 100 countries. We have more than like 1,500 stores across the globe. And we do everything. So we start from the ideation and the design of the products, manufacturing them, doing everything, allocation, logistics, and we have our own e-com, we have our own stores. So we have the whole spectrum. So when I joined ALDO almost 3 years ago, we had a lot of things related to reporting and dashboarding and to leverage the data to make business decisions. But then we were lacking doing AI, really. And one of the discussions that I had with our CEO, David Ben Sadoun, he told me that he regrets that we don't use AI enough. I said, okay, that's no problem at all. Let's actually go for it. Then started to look around to see what are the opportunities that we could really work on AI and then to bring business value. So started to talk to my stakeholders, with our business partners to see what are the pain points, what are the opportunities. And we identified quite a few of the challenges that we could solve with AI and with automation in a sense. Then we said, okay, can we actually afford doing all of that? Or should we be able to do a bit more research and maybe to bring in like a bit of the talent from universities, from academia, and then maybe some funding. So what we did, we formulated a project that's called Revenue Growth Management for retail and supply chain with AI. And then we applied for funding to a super cluster that from the government of Canada is called Scale AI. I'm not talking about the Scale AI, the company that's in the Silicon Valley, but we have a super cluster in Canada that they provide funding for projects that are in intersection of AI and supply chain in Canada. Project was accepted, and then we started to work with one of our partners, Ivara Labs, and we started to build it. So within that project, we have multiple different AI models. that includes demand forecasting, which is really the holy grail of retail. You want to ensure that you have a good demand forecasting model such that you can use it to do any type of planning or any type of decision making. So in season demand forecasting, and of course demand forecasting by itself does not bring a lot of value. It's not actionable at that moment. We paired it up with two impactful use cases. One is the markdown optimization. So within the season, we want to ensure that we have a good pricing approach, not marking up, but just marking down, but to ensure that we can have a good sell-through, we can have a good gross margin. And then the last piece is all about order fulfillment optimization, because we ship from the stores to the clients, and for that we want the model to pick the right store to ship from, but not just based on location or the distances, but also considers the demand, tries to avoid out of stock situations and the excess inventory and such. So these are more of the traditional AI models that we've been working on. Besides that, we have some Gen AI and Agentic AI that I think I'm going to have it for another question, I guess.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into those. It's very interesting to see where you all kind of began that journey. But I think one of the things that's interesting to me, obviously, you have your PhD in computer engineering, and your research was focused on machine learning and human-computer interaction. And obviously, you've been in the multiple markets that we talked about, kind of doing some of this work. How has your research impacted your real world business impact? And what I mean by that is oftentimes we see things in academia that don't necessarily translate into real world business outputs. I'm curious how you've sort of connected those dots.
Great question. So I finished my PhD in 2015, and then back then the AI wasn't as popular, maybe in industry at least, but in academia we've been trying to see how we can apply AI and machine learning specifically to different software problems. There was a field that was called mining software repositories. So we would build machine learning models that they would identify defects in applications. They would decide which part of application needs to be tested. They would do effort estimation of knowing that, okay, how long does it take for this project to be completed? And also things related to usability and the human-computer interaction of applications. And mobile was very popular, and I was building also a lot of mobile applications. And I did research around how can I leverage machine learning and predictive approaches to measure and then to predict the success of mobile applications in the market. And then I actually used this for multiple reasons, because I created my own questionnaires. I did some of the measurements as well as some of the calculations around the code base, and then leverage that in a machine learning and predictive model to predict that. And I worked a little on mobile and the intersection of the mobile and the AI after that, and applied this in some of the examples of applications that we've been building. And just want to say that the human-computer interaction field by itself is hugely disrupted right now with the large language models and the foundation models.
Right.
So many of the things that we've been doing back then may not super apply today because of the foundation models. And the human-computer interaction is, as the name suggests, is to be able to find out what are the best ways to interact with computers, and to be able to have the bi-directional communication, and accordingly to be able to learn from each other. But now the foundation models are in fact maybe the only user interface, or they will become the only user interface between humans and the computers. So that is I'm really looking forward to see how this is going to fold, and then maybe we will have some of the hardwares and different types of applications coming along. But yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And you mentioned ALDO Labs, and then I know through our research we saw you've embarked on a number of academic hackathons and capstone projects. I'm curious, in either case, can you share a little bit about the commercialization efforts from university partnerships into this future of AI and retail that we're all kind of experiencing, that's moving so fast?
Amazing. Yes. So we do many things. I will start with the Evado Labs part, which is already partially funded by Government of Canada with Scale AI. And definitely doing these type of things and being able to work with researchers from multiple universities, that is definitely really helpful. And Evado Labs is the execution partner of the Evado, which is a consortium of multiple universities across Montreal and then one in actually Quebec City. Then we have access to multiple different researchers in different areas. So some of them are specialized in, let's say, supply chain optimization. The others are really into pricing, and some others just purely machine learning and technical. Within this project, within the Scale AI project, we were able to create a scientific board, the scientific approach, and then to bring in multiple of the different professors from different universities, including McGill University that I also work at. And we have like weekly and sometimes bi-weekly meetings to talk about the scientific approaches. And all of this translates to better results. And we can definitely see that with those discussions and some of the solutions that we find during those discussions, we can improve the models. And every time that we improve machine learning or AI models, they translate to something very tangible, because these are real stuff, right? We are optimizing markdowns. And so far, we've seen that we are able to increase the gross margin by 3%, which is very significant for us, and I think for many of the organizations. And these are because we are leveraging sophisticated machine learning and optimization techniques. Besides that, it's very important to have the access to the talent, because we're talking about machine learning and AI, and of course we have good projects, and many of the talents, they are interested to work in these domains, but having the right connection is also important. So we organize hackathons, and within those hackathons, we formulate some of our problems in terms of use cases, and we provide sample data sets, and the students, they work on that real problem, with the real data. And we hired like some of them already at the ALDO Group, and this definitely helps in terms of retention. It helps also in terms of bringing the right talent.
Yes, super interesting. I almost feel like we could dive into that for a long time, but let me flip over to your book. So the Foundations of Agentic AI for Retail. There's so many, just the word agentic AI is probably, or that phrase is something that I'm hearing multiple times a day. And I love the tie into retail, right? I love that it's actionable, and it's an emerging, fast moving field. Let's spend some time on agentic. Could you maybe start with, for someone that's listening, that's new to the concept, what is agentic, and why is it a paradigm shift for retail?
Yes, definitely. That's a great question, and I think it's one of the most important questions to ask as of today. Everyone is talking about it, but let's demystify.
Yeah.
I will start with the traditional AI and mostly with machine learning as well, because AI is not new. We all know that AI has been here for many years. Neural networks, they've been there since 1950s.
Yeah.
But we never get the chance to build agents that they can act by themselves, right? So we will need to predefine things, to decide what are the exceptions, what type of things that they should do. We needed to implement rules. Then we said, okay, this is not trivial. We want these agents to learn from the data. And at that moment, let's say we call them agents, but they did not have a full agency. It was really artificial. Then we said, let's do machine learning. Of course, using the data, learning from the data, they could find out the patterns and they could revamp themselves. They could achieve better results. But the human supervision in most cases were required, such that we need to feed the data into a piece of code, a system. We need to also say, okay, what the outcome is and what can be. Model generates something, the AI generates something. As humans, we needed to go ahead and evaluate it. So there's this supervision needed to be there all the time. Of course, we had unsupervised models as well, but they were not as business oriented in many cases. Now we get to the point that we can have an intelligent entity that has the agency and can use other types of AI as just a tool. So I just want you to imagine, very simply, just a loop that has a reasoning, a brain, and that is the foundational model. Like large language models, sometimes smaller language models are going to be sufficient. This tool, this entity is able to use tools. So it can call APIs, it can write code by itself, it can read files, it can search internet. And once you give them an objective to say, okay, I want to do this specific type of thing, then it can do things by itself. It can refine things by itself. It can make things happen. It can decide. So when I wrote the Foundations of Agentic AI for retail, I could write it only for Foundations of Agentic AI. But then I was like, okay, can I actually make this a bit more practical to provide examples only in one domain such that they can really see what is going to happen behind the scene? Otherwise, the foundations are true. Like the foundations we've been talking about for many years, no addition of the foundation models, the large language models, is exceptional and it's really helpful. But there has been different types of approaches to build these agents. Then, if you're building these things for one specific domain, such as retail, can I build multiple of these agents that they can work together and they can make things happen? Not just, I'm going to build a machine learning model that does demand forecasting, but then the output of that demand forecasting needed to be presented to some of the end users, right? Or some of the business users in a dashboard. And they would just look into that and they would try to make some decisions. Otherwise, sometimes these models make mistakes. Sometimes the data is not there. There's always some sort of a drift.
Yeah.
And the users would provide you feedback, and then you need to go back and update these models. Now imagine that you have an agent, which is a system, instead of sitting in front of a screen, that can call and coordinate with another agent just doing the demand forecasting and look at the result and say, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, right? I just need to adjust this. And it has access to the tools to be able to evaluate these results, and then at times to go call another API or another agent to do the corrections. This is a big paradigm shift. This is just not static. This is not predetermined. We don't need to go ahead and create a lot of different rules or UIs, user interfaces. Instead, we need to build these agents that they have the sense of agency and they can decide. They have the reasoning behind the scene. And I could talk about this forever, so please stop me at some point.
No, it's fascinating. I actually want you to talk more about it. My biggest question is maybe because we're seeing, we run Comcast's AI accelerator. We're in our 5th cohort, and so we've looked at over 3,000 AI startups. We have, I think it's 46 pilots running currently throughout their organization. So we're seeing not only this, but the application of it across multiple challenges and business units live at the moment. And it's truly transformative. I want to stay in retail because one of the things I shared with one of our clients maybe a year and a half ago was I said, you have to be prepared for a world in which bots are selling to bots, that agentic is coming and that consumers are going to be using it. And you as a retailer are going to be using it, and that's going to be working with your supply chain. And it seemed like almost like a futuristic comment at the time, and I thought it was multi-years away. And agentic has changed that, in my opinion. I feel like that is coming. How do you think about how agentic is going to transform, let's say, omni-channel retail as we know
it? So, there are many answers to that, but the shortest one is, it will transform everything. Any system, any application, any role that we see today will change. And the main reason for that is that this is the first time in human history that we will have a system that is more intelligent than us, right? something that can decide properly. It knows pretty much all the domains. So an example for that is that we have a benchmark for the large language models that is called Human's Last Exam. There are 4,000 PhD level questions from different domains. And if you go find very genius people that they have maybe more than one even PhDs and ask them these questions, they will not be able to answer more than 5% of these questions.
Okay.
But with the pace of AI, where we're going, we are about like 40% right now. And these models, they get better and better. So what I'm trying to say, they know business. They know any type of business. They know also how to code. They know technicalities and that. And in the future, instead of having static UIs, applications for omni-channel or for anything in any industry or any organization, instead of having these static things that people sit in front and try to interact with, as you said, we can have networks of agents, chains of agents. We can have internet of agents that they can do things and they can work together. So of course, this is not going to happen in one day, but
Right.
we see and we build some of these already, right? So like with the co-pilot assistance and that, we've been trying to build like single agents, not multiple agents, but they can still follow very interesting goal-oriented, tasks and then achieve things. Now we're talking about different types of protocols. They needed to have protocols to be able to make this thing work. So Anthropic came out with MCP, Model Context Protocol, that makes it very easy and standard for the agents to call tools. So in the future, instead of just writing so many APIs or different ways to interact with that, we can just use MCPs. Then Google came out and said, okay, let's build a protocol to make it easier for agents to talk to each other. And then that's A to A, agents to agents protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to adapt that to say, okay, if I'm building an agent, I want this agent to be in this agent's network or internet of agents so that they can work together. And that's the key. Not having, you don't need someone to just supervise them. They can work together. But this is not sufficient. So now we move forward with how do we share memory and context between the agents? And some of the protocols are coming out, like some such as Mem0, to say that if I have multiple agents, they should be aware of what is happening in that context. And then finally, at times that we need human supervision, that we will definitely, we need to implement human in the loop type of approaches. Then what should be the protocol around the UI itself? So there is like a protocol around called AGUI that makes it simpler for the agents and the UI to communicate with each other so that they can bring in human to the loop. So like not so short answer was this, that actually everything is going to change. And I think this is bigger than internet or even bigger than electricity to some degree. And I don't know if everyone, many of us actually realize that or not, but the opportunities and also to some degree the risks are just limitless.
Can I ask you, and I'm going off script here, so feel free to tell me no. But one of the things, I had a conversation earlier this week with a loyal listener, my mom of the show, and I was sharing a very similar point of view that I think while a lot of people feel that AI and agentic are overhyped, I think they're wildly underhyped. I think people are not understanding the possibilities, the challenges, and the disruption. And I do think it's on the scale of internet and even more so electricity. That scares a lot of people, rightfully. You mentioned human in the loop, which I think might be a piece that people would be really excited to know more of. Mm-hmm. How do you see this? And I don't know, this is the part where I was like, I don't know if you'd want to use this as an example, but to me, like a simple example is like, okay, I need a pair of shoes from ALDO. And like, I have like a very specific experience set for how I would go about that, right? And maybe I wouldn't think ALDO first. I would think I just need a pair of shoes. And then I would go through some mental loops of my own. and maybe there's not a store nearby, or I'm in a rush and I go online and I find the site and I look to see what you have available in my size and I buy it or I don't. And a bunch of stuff happens in the background, which I don't care about, but you guys care a lot about at ALDO, right? So I'm curious, how does that change with agentic?
Yes.
And where is the human still in the loop?
So like one of the key points, as you also mentioned, is the search. That is going to change drastically, and it's already changing. So what we do today is we go to a website and then we put some keywords, and that website doesn't know much about us. If we log in and then we provide information, of course it knows to some degree, but we still need to provide keywords. It doesn't have the context, it doesn't have much of the memory. It just gives you some products or lists or links, and then you need to refine them, right? You need to go ahead and use some filters or this type of things to be able to get something that you want. But you're still in the loop, maybe too much in the loop, just to decide what you want. And this is going to change because the Gen AI models, and not even agentic models, just Gen AI, is capable of understanding and then generating things that are accordingly fine for you, because they have the context. You can actually talk to them. You can talk about the occasion, you could talk about the style or the look, or if it's for a rainy day, if it's for a wedding, if it's for this or that, and then they would provide you something, and you could further refine the results by just keep talking to them, saying that, okay, but I just want this in black, not blue, or something like that. And people are going to get used to this. So one of the things that we've done in one of the hackathons, one of the winner themes, we implemented this, but then we got to the point that, wait a minute, everyone is going to just implement this, right? I mean, this is going to be pretty much the interface moving forward. So I do see that many of these applications and systems are going to be having this, like the iOS, the Android, the web is going to have this. In our case, it was Shopify, that Shopify is going to just integrate this thing inside. And then it will bring you back something, but then you need to train this thing because it's going to have the memory and the context such that it can continue to serve you well. That's the part that human in the loop definitely works. So how do we interact with it? What do we provide? How do we prompt it? And all of these type of things are going to play an important role. On the other hand, when we get into more of the back-end stuff, like supply chain related things, sometimes the data is not perfect. Things can go wrong, and sometimes the agents and the AI does not have any clue about those type of things because the data is not fed. And in those cases, of course, there should be some human supervision such that we can refine the results and make the right decisions for it.
It's interesting. I mean, I get so torn with the excitement of what is possible here. And then also the flip side of like, well, wait a second, how does anyone make money to have the agent tell them what shoes they can have for their feet because the job they had of finding the shoes before is gone. And so that's probably the doomsday side of me that is just thinking through where that human in the loop is, what the value is there, that exchange, because agent to agent is such a powerful concept in so many different ways.
I think, like as a society, as humans, it's hard to answer that at this moment because so many things are going to change. But I do see that we are going to be working differently, and we're just going to be faster in doing everything. There's, of course, a lot of oversight that is going to be required, governance, regulations, and the guardrails that needs to also be implemented to ensure that these agents, they're going to act for good, right? Not for bad. So there's all of these things. On top of that, anyone that does anything related to STEM, I think they're going to need to do more. They're going to do more. And then we are going to be using these technologies and the agentic approaches to do faster research, maybe to solve some of humanity's problems, right? Healthcare issues and so many of the things. So recently, Google published an article around AlphaEvolve, which is using reinforcement learning and some of the evolutionary approaches to improve itself. So we see that AI can improve itself and can improve its performance, but also can solve some of the existing problems that it's very hard for us to solve. And this will hopefully translate to many of the breakthroughs that we require as human beings. That's the positive side of it that I'm also looking forward to. And I do think that with the vibe coding and the agentic coding, we always talk about, okay, there will be no job for the software engineers or for the scientists or like for the data scientists. But I tend to disagree because we can do more and we should do more using this type of tooling.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Well, this has been such an exciting conversation. I have all sorts of other questions I'd love to ask you, but before we get out of here, is there anything that you want to share that we didn't cover that you just want to talk about before we kind of tell people where to go to learn more about you?
If you want to stay a bit longer, I'm fine. If you want to ask more questions, or it's fine for me.
Okay, well, in that case, I have two in particular. One is, there's all these things that are happening. We've talked about the multi-agent systems, causal reasoning, federated learning. What are you most excited about, and how are you and ALDO preparing to leverage these advancements?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack over there. So the federated learning is really interesting. And of course, we're talking about learning on edges, right? We're talking about offline learning. So these are very interesting because if we want to have our own personal assistants, we don't want this to be all over the place, right? We just want to have the right control over it, right accesses, and the right security. So that's, I think, is a very important piece. And the better the GPUs and the computation becomes, we will be able to create these type of things. Now, privacy preserved federated learning is another area that is going to be a key to ensure that we do share these information accordingly, and then we can train these models and make them sophisticated for us. Before going for the ALDO examples, I would want to say that anything that touches humans in terms of either education and training or healthcare, I'm really looking forward to be kind of disrupted or improved. So today, education is particular. You go through very specific curriculum, or programs, and then some generalization happens. But with agentic AI and specifically foundation models, we will have personalized, truly personalized education that is going to be accessible like 24/7 for us. And it can adapt, it can make things happen accordingly. So it's going to be super easy to learn anything and to have access to any type of information. The other part of it is that many of the researchers that we have today, that they're untapped. Let's say not every paper that's being published gets enough attention. And sometimes some of them are just hidden somewhere, but that they could in fact have a profound impact on everything, on research, but also on humanity. I would say by just looking at the type of researchers that they failed, let's say, or the hypothesis was rejected, we could get into some very meaningful results, and we could use it in the future. So AI is perfect for doing these type of things, to crunch a lot of different documents, data, and then to be able to find very interesting patterns in them. So I'm looking forward to have very interesting results in terms of the research itself and the education, because the better educated we are, the better the world becomes, and then the more that we can achieve. That is my hopeful sense. Then at the ALDO Group, we try to use AI everywhere, like agentic AI. So we see this as two types. One type is that low code and the no code for everyday essential type of things, that using, let's say, Copilot, you can have a lot of productivity gains. You don't need to summarize the emails or like the meetings or some of the documentations, and that is a lot easier. On the other hand, like the multi-agent approaches that they require coding, in my opinion, they're a little more interesting because now you can achieve things. An example that we have done is we have a data privacy officer that we receive data privacy related requests, and then the agent passes through them, quantifies them, qualifies them, and groups them, and then creates like tickets for them to be followed. Or in the IT organization, we have a role in Agile that is called product owner. What it does, it captures all the requirements and then creates stories, epics, and such, so to ensure that we can implement the right products from the data or application point of view. My team created an agent to automate the product ownership approach. And you just give a bit of the text blurb. It does everything. It writes the stories. It writes the success criteria. It also looks at the workloads of everyone, defines the roles, makes suggestions in terms of architectural dependencies and that. And of course, like the coding itself. What is important to emphasize is that coding is not just coding. Coding is the way that computers solve things. They can write code to achieve things. They can write code to solve mathematical problems or physics or this and that. And anything that we do that somehow uses code or requires code is getting a lot more productive, because now we can analyze the data, we can create applications or systems a lot faster. And this is going to have a profound impact on everything.
No doubt. Well, Fatih, let me get you out of here on this. Where can listeners go to find your book and learn more about the work you're doing at ALDO and McGill?
Thank you very much. So the book is in the print format right now. I don't have the electronic version yet. And one reason is that it's a lot of diagrams and a lot of codes and such. They can find it on Amazon already, and it's going to be published in Barnes and Nobles and different places soon. Okay. And then if just search for me, like they're gonna find out some code GitHub repositories that they can go explore the code, and there's some code examples. And I try to share this at different conferences, and hopefully I will bump into some of your, some of the people that are going to be listening to that in some of those conferences, and I would love to have their inputs and their feedback.
Wonderful. Well, Fatih, thank you for sharing your time and your insights today. I can't wait to read the book. And also thank you for all you're doing to spark change in this really exciting space.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the great discussion. And I'm very happy to be here.